So you see a few cubes sitting in an art gallery, and you think to yourself, this is the greatest hoax that anyone has ever pulled off. You immediately walk away, discouraged by the wide gulf between what you hope for when you walk into a museum and what they've presented to you. How did we get here? How could these cubes that the artists didn't even make with their own hands be important? This is the case for minimalism. First off, we're not talking about minimalism as a general sensibility or the life-changing magic of tidying up. We're talking about the art of a particular moment in time, namely the 1960s, when all of a sudden there was a lot of geometric abstract art. Some of it was painting by artists like Frank Stella and Ellsworth Kelly, but most of it was sculpture by artists like Donald Judd, Carl Andre, Dan Flavin, Anne Truitt, Robert Morris, Tony Smith, Ronald Bladen, and Saul LeWitt. Art critics called it ABC art, object art, primary structures, and cool art, but the term minimalism prevailed. These artists never called their art minimalist, by the way, nor did they like the term, or the implication that the work was so reductive that it was minimally art. But minimalism was a rejection of what came before, specifically abstract expressionism, which dominated the art market in the 1950s. These new artists wanted to remove expression completely. Remove emotion, empty the work, idiosyncratic gesture, make it resistant to biographical reading. Their hard-edged, basic shapes and forms avoided illusion, metaphor, and overt symbolism. The forms were often repeated, one thing after another, in regular, non-hierarchical arrangements, rejecting compositional balancing. No artists hemming and hawing over the canvas here. The objects were impersonal, many of them machine-made, fabricated from new and industrial materials. Sometimes this entailed ready-made units, like Andre's bricks or Flavin's fluorescent tubes. They didn't want you to ooh and ah, or admire the handling of paint. As LeWitt once said, it is best that the basic unit be deliberately uninteresting. Robert Morris wrote that he could hear a resounding no at the time. No to transcendence and spiritual values, heroic scale, anguished decisions, historicizing narrative, valuable artifact, intelligent structure. Interesting visual experience. But what they were saying yes to was a new and startling realness, abandoning the pedestal to dismantle the separation between you and the art. Judd claimed these works are neither painting nor sculpture, but instead specific objects occupying real space. These objects aren't pointing to anything or referencing anything. Andre called his work a kind of plastic poetry in which elements are combined to produce space. So there is no illusion of space. It just is space. Minimalism had its haters from the start. In 1967, art critic Michael Fried attacked the work for being theatrical. For him, it was an object in a room that had presence before a viewer, but it did not have what good art has, which is presentness, or an instant of aesthetic experience which occurs in no real space or time at all. But Fried really just ended up affirming exactly what the artists were trying to do, proving how radical it really was. Despite its detractors, minimalism became all the rage. This geometric, unadorned style flowed throughout the worlds of fashion, theater, and design. In short, it was cool. And then because these artists were never trying to be minimalist to begin with, they moved on to other things, and other kinds of art had its day. But minimalism changed things. For centuries, art had been trying to trick you, convince you that the hunk of rock was something other than a hunk of rock, but not this. You feel like there's gotta be some secret to it, but there isn't. There's nothing to interpret. This is what it is. It wasn't supposed to look like art of the past, and it wasn't supposed to function like it either. With minimalism, meaning doesn't rest inside the object waiting to be unlocked. The meaning is in the context and exists in your interaction with it. But minimalism is a resistant lover. It's just not that into you. It encourages observation, but doesn't draw you in, and it was never trying to. Remember, these objects were supposed to be emptied of pretension, of mastery, of the usual seduction between art and viewer, and of the grand, glorious traditions that preceded them. But the fetishization and commodification of minimalist art has complicated and polluted these ideas. What's less real than million-dollar plywood boxes? And yet, for me at least, minimalist art can still impart a strong feeling, a feeling for space, light, for presence and absence. You're aware of your own body in the gallery as you've never been before. You notice that your position in the room shapes your perception of the thing. You appreciate the architecture and the spareness. And in a world filled with complexity and information and lots of stuff, this is a balm.
And a sculpture that in many ways doesn't really seem to be
a sculpture.
Right.
It's not freestanding.
It's not. It's more like a relief, but it sticks.
But it's not really a relief.
Not really, because there is no background that is attached to.
And they're isolated units, all the same.
That's right. This is a work by Donald Judd, and it's a piece of minimalist sculpture. And it was done in 1969, and it's an untitled work. He would have had the exact same form replicated over and over again. So each one of those boxes that you see there were not made by him, and it was also made in a factory. So it has a kind of a machine-made aesthetic to it.
It somehow seems to me like it's made to sort of interact in the space of the gallery.
Absolutely. In fact, he's very specific in giving instructions on how to hang this, how to attach it to the wall, that each one be spaced 6 inches apart. And usually the work is supposed to go, or the first time it was made, it was supposed to be evenly spaced all the way up to the ceiling. So it would be somewhat dictated by a normal height of a ceiling. Mm-hmm. Of course, that would change depending on what space you're hanging.
But this one doesn't do that.
Right. I think that's because of the photograph that you're looking at particularly. It's
made of something that has a reflective surface.
High sheen to it. The outside of it is brass, and then it's difficult to see here, but there are plexi kind of windows that are the tops of each one of these boxes. So you can see through it, and sometimes depending on which piece it is, they're intensely colored like pink or kind of a yellowish color or translucent. So it interacts with the space and creates a kind of a shadow and coloristic effect on the wall, the blank wall of the gallery.
So should we be thinking back here to sculptures made of bronze?
I think so, but also the negation of that. One of the things that Judd and other minimalists are trying to do are to be of their time. So there's that whole tradition that he's continuing of modern art, where you choose the materials and the themes of your own time. And here to choose something that is brass, which can be used in older art, but to make it look like it's sheet metal, something that comes out of a factory and in fact is not made by him but made by other workers, is very important. And the plexi is an altogether new material. So it really
speaks to our factory industrial culture.
Exactly, and it is what it is. It doesn't disguise itself. He's very explicit about not trying to make illusionistic art. So he doesn't want to make a sculpture look like a person or a space that isn't there. Instead, they're clearly boxes, and the plexi allows you to see that they're not solid. So there's a clarity and a literal quality that he wants to bring out.
And it also reminds me of a skyscraper or other kinds of modernist forms.
Right. It does evoke that, and just the sheer replication of the same form over and over again.
It's very modern,
yeah. It suggests machine production and one thing being...
Going shopping and seeing everything the same in the grocery store.
Exactly.
900 versions of the same thing.
Right. Kind of a product-like quality to it. It's easy to see how the clean qualities of it, the shininess of it, and also the plexi. Maybe at first glance it seems oversimplified, but on further scrutiny, there's a lot of color and reflection and light at play.